Have you ever woken up one day and realized that the things you used to love just don't light you up anymore? Maybe you once spent hours painting, or you couldn't put your guitar down, or you felt so alive tending to your garden. But now, when you pick up that paintbrush or strum a chord, there's nothing. Just silence inside. No spark. Almost like you're going through the motions. But your heart isn't there anymore. If that sounds familiar, don't worry. You're not broken. You're not lazy. And it's not that you've outgrown life itself. Something much deeper is happening. Something Carl Jung, one of the most fascinating minds in psychology, actually wrote about. And here's the curious part. Losing interest in your hobbies isn't a sign of failure. It's a hidden signal that you've entered a brand new stage of your inner journey. A stage where your old self no longer fits. And your deeper self is quietly asking for something more. In this video, we'll explore why this happens. Why, after a spiritual or psychological awakening, so many people lose interest in their old hobbies. We'll look at it through Jung's ideas, but don't worry, I'll keep it simple and practical. By the end, you'll understand why this shift happens and what it's really pointing you toward. And hey, before we dive in, if you've ever felt this strange emptiness with your passions, hit that subscribe button. Because I make videos exactly for people like you, curious, evolving, and searching for deeper meaning in their lives. So what do we mean when we talk about an awakening? Awakening doesn't always mean a big spiritual event where everything changes overnight. Sometimes it's subtle. It's psychological. It's those quiet moments when the old version of you, the one who loved certain people, certain jobs, certain entertainments, just starts to feel tired. Almost like clothes that no longer fit. Maybe you notice that the friends you once laughed with now leave you drained. The TV shows or music you once enjoyed feel shallow. The hobbies that used to bring joy feel like chores. At first, this can feel scary. You might ask yourself, what's wrong with me? Why can't I enjoy what I used to love? But here's the truth. Nothing is wrong with you. Something is actually very right. You are shifting. Your values are changing. Your consciousness is expanding beyond what once entertained or distracted you. Carl Jung had a word for this process. Individuation. It's the lifelong journey of becoming your true self, not the self shaped by society, expectations, or your old identity, but the deeper self waiting underneath. And here's where it gets interesting. When you start walking this path, old hobbies often lose their shine. Why? Because they were tied to the old you. They belong to the persona, the mask you showed the world. So when those hobbies no longer spark joy, it isn't a failure. It's a symptom of growth. It's proof that you've outgrown the surface layer, and something within you is pulling you toward deeper meaning. And trust me, that pull is worth following. If this resonates so far, make sure to subscribe, because the next part will uncover exactly why your mind and soul drop certain hobbies after awakening, and how that shift is actually guiding you toward something far more fulfilling. Think back for a second. What were your hobbies before your awakening, before this shift inside you began? For most of us, they weren't just hobbies. They were ways to distract ourselves, to build an identity, or even to fit into the world around us. Maybe you got into sports because it gave you a team, a sense of belonging. Maybe you loved fashion because it gave you confidence, or gaming because it gave you escape and control in a world where you felt powerless. Maybe you collected things, books, vinyl records, or sneakers, because it made you feel unique, like you had something that set you apart. And there's nothing wrong with any of this. In fact, these hobbies probably kept you sane, gave you joy, and even shaped the person you were becoming. But here's the catch. Many of these passions weren't born purely from your deepest self. They were shaped by what Carl Jung called the persona, the mask we wear for the world. Let me tell you a quick story. I knew someone who played piano beautifully. Everyone admired them for it. The family would gather around. Friends would compliment them. And it became part of their identity. But here's the twist. They didn't actually enjoy it. They weren't playing out of passion, but out of pressure. They were performing because it was expected of them. The applause, the approval, that was the real reward, not the music itself. And this is what happens to so many of us. Our hobbies are tied up in the mask we show to others. The version of ourselves we want the world to love and accept. But deep inside, there's another layer. A hidden self waiting to be heard. And when awakening begins, that mask starts to crack. If this is striking a chord with you, subscribe right now because the next part is where it gets really interesting. Why those hobbies suddenly lose all their spark after awakening. So why does this happen? Why do the hobbies that once felt like oxygen suddenly feel empty, even pointless? Carl Jung gives us a powerful lens to understand this. It all starts with the persona, that mask you wore. When awakening happens, the mask begins to crack. Suddenly, the activities tied to image, to identity, to impressing others, they just don't hold the same power anymore. Playing piano for applause, dressing up just for validation, chasing hobbies for attention. Those things lose their grip. But then comes something even deeper, the shadow. Jung described the shadow as the hidden part of ourselves, the pieces we've pushed down because they didn't fit our persona. Maybe you suppressed your anger, your creativity, your sensitivity, or your wildness. And here's the thing. Once the shadow starts to rise, old hobbies feel shallow. They don't touch the depth of who you're becoming. And beyond that is the biggest force of all, the self. Jung saw the self as the center of the psyche, the deeper intelligence guiding us toward wholeness. When the self begins to call, it pulls you away from distractions and toward what's truly aligned with your growth. That's why hobbies that used to keep you busy, whether binge-watching shows or gaming for hours, or obsessing over collecting things, suddenly feel meaningless because your deeper path is calling you somewhere else. Even on a psychological level, it makes sense. The brain changes. The dopamine rush you used to get from those hobbies fades because meaning has shifted. You're no longer chasing quick pleasure. You're searching for depth. And of course, this comes with feelings, sadness, confusion, maybe even grief. It can feel like you've lost a piece of yourself. But here's the important part. This isn't depression, though sometimes it overlaps. It's not about losing joy forever. It's about realignment. Your system is adjusting, letting go of old sources of stimulation so it can make room for something more authentic. So if you're in that strange space where nothing excites you like it used to, don't panic. You're not broken. You're being rewritten from the inside out. And if you want to keep unpacking how this process unfolds, make sure you subscribe. Because in the next part, we'll dive into individuation itself and how this shift is actually the biggest sign of your inner growth. So here's where Carl Jung drops a concept that might just change the way you see this whole experience. He called it individuation. And no, it's not some cold academic word. It's actually a heartbeat of what you're going through. Individuation is the process of becoming whole. It's about bringing together all the hidden unconscious parts of yourself and weaving them into a balanced, authentic life. Not just the parts you like to show people, but the parts you usually keep in the shadows too. Now here's the twist. Many of your old hobbies were tied to just one side of you. They represented a kind of one-sidedness. For example, maybe you were obsessed with productivity. Your hobbies might have reflected that, jogging at 5 a.m., always reading how-to books, filling every moment with busy activities. On the surface, that looked impressive. But inside, you were unbalanced. You were denying the part of you that longed for stillness, reflection, or rest. Then awakening comes. And suddenly, you can't stand those busy hobbies anymore. It's not laziness. It's your psyche demanding balance. It's saying, hey, there's more to you than this mask of productivity. Slow down. Listen. That's individuation at work. The psyche nudges you to let go of activities that no longer feed your whole self. And yes, this can feel like loss. Like you're standing in an empty space, staring at the ashes of what used to bring joy. But what's actually happening is this. Space is being cleared. Cleared for new, authentic creativity to rise. Jung believed the psyche is always moving us toward wholeness, even when it feels uncomfortable. Losing interest in hobbies isn't the end. It's a doorway. A doorway into discovering parts of yourself you've ignored, silenced, or never even met before. So if you're in that gap, trust it. You're being guided towards something deeper. And hey, if this resonates, make sure you subscribe, because in the next section, we'll go even deeper into the shadow and why facing it is the real reason your old hobbies stopped working. Now let's talk about something Jung considered absolutely central, the shadow. The shadow is all the parts of you that you've pushed away, rejected, or repressed. It can be desires, talents, fears, or even wild, creative energy you didn't know what to do with. It's not bad. It's just hidden. Here's the thing. Before awakening, many of your hobbies were ways to avoid your shadow. Think about it. How often do we use hobbies as distractions? Maybe you gamed for hours not because you loved every moment of it, but because it kept you from feeling lonely. Maybe you were always busy with crafts or sports, not because they fed your soul, but because silence scared you, and then awakening arrives. Suddenly, those old hobbies lose their magic. Why? Because avoidance doesn't work anymore. The shadow is knocking. Take this example. Someone obsessed with gaming realizes the game isn't fun anymore. They feel restless, empty, even irritated while playing. Why? Because deep down, the truth is rising. The hobby wasn't about fun. It was about escaping loneliness. And now the psyche says, no more escaping. It's time to face the loneliness itself. When hobbies collapse like this, it's actually a sign of reclaimed energy. All the energy you poured into distraction is being pulled back, redirected. That's why it feels like a void at first. But that energy is waiting to be transformed into something real. So here's the invitation. Instead of mourning what you've lost, ask, what is the shadow offering me? What part of myself is finally ready to come alive? And if that question stirs something in you, subscribe now. Because in the next part, we'll explore how this shift opens up the search for deeper meaning, and why Jung believed that meaning is far more powerful than pleasure. So, what happens after this emptiness? After the hobbies you once loved are gone, and you sat in that uncomfortable silence for a while? This is when something beautiful begins to happen. New forms of creativity rise up, but they're different this time. They don't come from ego, they come from soul. Instead of painting to impress, you might find yourself painting from your unconscious, letting colors and shapes emerge without worrying about the result. Instead of journaling just your to-do list, you might start writing down your dreams, exploring symbols, following threads that feel mysterious but deeply alive. Even conversations change. You no longer crave small talk, but meaningful soul-to-soul connections. And here's where Jung gives us another gift, the idea of synchronicity. He believed the unconscious often guides us through meaningful coincidences. That means your new hobbies may not appear in a planned way. They might show up by chance, through a random conversation, a book you stumble on, or a sudden urge you can't explain. That's your deeper self guiding you toward what's next. For some, gardening becomes spiritual, a way to connect with the cycles of life. For others, writing becomes healing, a way to process emotions and touch truth. For you, it might be something unexpected, something you never thought would matter. The key is to stay open. Don't force it. Let life nudge you. Let your unconscious whisper. What feels unusual today might become the most meaningful practice of your life. And if this excites you, if you feel that pull towards something new, subscribe right now, because in the next part, we're going to tie all of this together and show how losing your hobbies is actually the biggest sign that you're evolving into your true self. So let's step back and bring all of this together. If you've lost interest in your hobbies after awakening, it isn't failure. It isn't laziness. And it definitely isn't proof that you've lost yourself. In fact, it's the opposite. It's a sign that you're growing into who you truly are. The hobbies tied to your persona, the mask you wore for others, begin to fade because they no longer match your truth. The rise of the shadow shifts your desires, pulling you to face what you once avoided. And the process of individuation, becoming whole, calls you toward new, more meaningful pursuits. Instead of clinging desperately to old passions that no longer feel alive, trust the process. Awakening has a way of stripping away what is shallow so it can make room for what is deep. It rewires your sense of joy, moving it from ego-driven pleasures to soul-driven nourishment. That's why what once felt like fun now feels empty, because your deeper self is hungry for something richer. So don't see this as the end of joy. See it as the beginning of a new chapter, one where your creativity and passions are aligned not with who you used to be, but with who you are becoming. And if you felt this shift, subscribe right now, because I create videos to walk with you through these transformations, helping you see that what feels like loss is actually a doorway into something extraordinary. If you take just one thing from this video, let it be this. Losing interest in your hobbies doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're evolving. Your soul is guiding you away from what no longer serves you and into new experiences that may look quieter, subtler, or even stranger at first, but they are deeply yours. So pay attention to the small nudges. Maybe it's an urge to write, to walk in silence, to pick up a book you'd never normally read. Maybe it's a feeling to plant something, or to simply sit still and listen. These whispers matter. Carl Jung always encouraged us to listen to our dreams, our symbols, our inner voice. That's where the real map lies. That's where your next hobby, your next passion, your next piece of meaning will come from. So here's my invitation. Notice what quietly calls to you now. It may not be loud, it may not come with applause, but it's real. And that's where your new joy begins. If this resonated with you, hit that subscribe button, because I'll be sharing more insights from Jung and other thinkers to help you navigate this path. And if you found this video helpful, give it a like. It helps more people who are going through the same thing find it too. Remember, awakening isn't the end of your hobbies. It's the beginning of living from your soul.